When it comes to the Ys games, I've only played one or two of them on the PSP and I thought they were pretty cool, but the first one that really got me hooked was Memories of Celceta. First, it was on the Vita, so I could play it whenever I wanted. It had solid combat, there were different characters to use, multiple skills, and a perfect dodge. I missed out on Ys 8 though, but since I got my hands on Ys 9, I could've went to play it and see how it's grown. But first, this is combat overview. In this series I go over the general controls to the game's main mechanic or mechanics, who or what we use those tools on, and then seeing how it all comes together. Bit more in depth, but hey, that's what I do. Alright, so pressing square we do our basic attack. There's no hold inputs or delays to get different attacks, just square. There's also a bit of end-lag after that last swing too, so it's not loopable. Pretty simple, but it gets the job done. We also start the game off with this zip ability, so pressing R2 will pull you towards an enemy, letting you get in close to get the action started. It doesn't work the other way around though, it only pulls you in. Alright, for our defenses, we can dodge with L1. It has some solid iframes and you don't even cancel startup on our attacks. And remember that laggy combo finisher I mentioned? While dodging will cut that out entirely, letting us loop them, keeping things moving. Also, dodging on landing after being knocked down will break your fall. And now the good stuff. So if we time our dodge, it'll do a perfect dodge called a flash move, which we can even do in the air too. Yeah, it'll increase your movement speed, you'll attack faster, and gives invincibility while that little buff is active. Okay, so the new addition is pretty damn hype. So on R1 we got this parry. Its active window is super tiny, so you really gotta know an enemy's attack timings if you want to use it. But if you time it right, you do a flash guard. Not only will it deny the enemy's attack from damaging you, it also has all your attacks do critical damage, really letting you hit him hard. You can even jump and get a flash guard in the air, looking like Dante over here. But yeah, it's a higher skill level option, but it's super powerful. It covers you entirely, letting you parry behind you. You can even flash guard during your basic attacks, and you can get them back to back, letting you do some pretty damn satisfying plays. So if you're paying attention and can react in time, you'll be this unstoppable machine. Hell, you can even have both active at the same time. Okay, all in all, everything's pretty low committal and reactionary, making this fast-paced back and forth loop. And the last option you get later on is this ability to dive on L2. It avoids enemies' attacks and even deals damage to whoever touches your little shadow puddle. But yeah, this is an option if perfect dodges and flash guards are a bit too hard. On our HUD, we got ours and our team's health on the right, and right below it, these four icons are our skills. So holding R1 and pressing a face button will use them. They deal more damage than our base attack and have more uses as well. Some are launchers or useful for general crowd control, that kind of thing. You do get a mix to choose from and get to assign them to each button, so it'll be different for everyone. Also, these skills cancel whatever you're doing, so they can be used to combo, cancel end lag, and you can even use them in the air if you want. Pretty useful attacks. And because of that, each skill uses a bit of this blue bar called our SP. It'll refill on its own, but hitting enemies with our basic attacks will add to it too. Doing a perfect dodge will give a chunk of SP and quickens the rate it'll refill just in general, from my experience. And there's actually a pretty neat mechanic here. So if a skill is the final blow to an enemy, you'll do something called a skill finish, and you'll be given a portion of the SP you spent right back into your meter. Kinda reminds me of key pulsing in Neo. There's no timing input, but just the whole meter management thing and how you can keep most of what you spent to have some resources for later use so you can stay on the aggressive. Now the last thing is this orange meter called the boost gauge. It slightly gets filled up by our attacks, but hitting enemies with our skills is where it's at and adds to it the most. Skill finish and splash guards add to it as well. Now when it's halfway or full, you can pop it by holding L1 and pressing L1. It'll start to empty, but while it's active, you'll start to heal, all your attacks do more damage, raises your defense, get increased movement speed, and your SP will fill faster. So yeah, this is a pretty damn strong powered up state. And if you press R and L1 again, you'll do the super powerful attack that'll use any leftover meter. So I'll use this until the very last second to get the most out of my boost gauge. So to break it down, basic attacks fills up our SP, which lets us use our skills, and damage from those skills fills up our boost. Then perfect dodges gives SP, and parries build up that boost meter. So everything flows and has their options. When it comes to the enemies, we see a few throughout the game. We got lemures, which are these evil things found in the city, mix of spear divers from above, stationary shooters, tankier ones, and so on. And as you explore, you'll fight lizards and dinosaurs, knights that'll lunge forward with a spiral attack, and a whole lot more. There's a wide range of enemies who will show up in specific locations, so you'll be seeing different enemies with unique attacks as the game goes on, keeping the combat encounters pretty fresh. Some enemies even have moves depending on your position. These archers, for example, will of course shoot arrows at you if you're far, but if you get too close, they'll jump back and shoot an explosive arrow at their feet. Some enemies will block either with a shield or weapon. When you attack them, you see this little deflect spark on them. To open them up, hold square to do this powerful charge strike to break their guard. Now something I noticed, enemies' state won't be affected by normal attacks. Like if you hit an enemy while they're starting up an attack animation, their attack will still come out and just do what they were doing before. But using those skills instead, like our launchers or wide crowd control swipes, will knock them over or toss them up. Wasn't a problem at all, it's just something I noticed. But since you can do your perfect dodges and flash guards whenever, it's just easy pickings. And something else that's here, so enemies actually have a stagger break mechanic to them that is on us. So doing critical damage from flash guards or hitting them with their counter attack types will add to it. And when it fills up, they'll be broken. And when that happens, especially on bosses, they'll lower their defenses both literally and figuratively. They'll just stand there and they receive more damage than before while they're recovering. And speaking of the bosses, they're honestly pretty fun to fight. They have some pretty enjoyable patterns to them, and they know they did too, because once you beat the game, you'll like this full-on boss rush mode. Okay, it is part RPG, so I'm gonna run through that real fast. So you'll run around the city completing quests, which will fill up this meter on the top left corner, and getting it to 100 will open up these event missions. Going to them will start this tower defense wave-based mission, receive a rating giving you some upgrade materials that can be used for your armor, weapons, and all that. And doing these will open up more of the city, letting you progress through the story, which will lead you to going to other places as well, like outside the city, doing more dungeons, changing the scenery and enemies and all that. Leveling up gives you higher stats, of course more skills as well. Cool thing is those skills have their own proficiency levels to them, so the more you use a specific skill, they'll level up, becoming stronger, and cost less SP. We have multiple characters, and pressing circle will swap between them on the fly, and I noticed that it can be used as a pseudo dodge too, which is kind of cool. I never use it since we have way more rewarding options for timing defensive options, but it's still pretty interesting. And the armor I mentioned, it just comes down to more strength, higher defense, more resistance against certain debuffs, and we have more specialized stuff like cutting the cost of skills, extending the buff duration after perfect dodge or flash guards. There's a whole exploring aspect too, but all you need to know is that everything you do is adding up to something that'll better you and your party in some way. So that's pretty good. And that's Ys 9 Monstrum Nox. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think more than Ys Celceta, to be honest. It took me some time to get used to the new camera for this Ys, but that's whatever. Because goddamn, he added so much more here all the way around. The combat especially is way more fleshed out, making it way much more fun and involved with the extra meter mechanics and defensive options. And luckily for me, there was a character that was legit my build from Stranger of Paradise. I was running around with this huge axe, dealing big damage, had a charge attack too to break them, similar skills too. I even had the armor to convert my damage into health so I can go on the aggressive. All while playing the best girl too, so yeah, this game is pretty solid. Because of that, it kind of gave me this Stranger of Paradise light type of experience, which is definitely fine by me. So if you want a straightforward, easy pick up and play action RPG with a solid combat that's smooth sailing, Ys 9 is a definitely fun pick. It might come off as mashy, but with everything that's here, you'll be thinking enough if you want to. You can take it a bit more serious as well if you want to. Either way, you'll find something here for you. I know I did.